Welcome to the Prans Kairahi program. Today we've got Hugh giving us an introduction and just setting the context for the overall program that we've signed you up to. We've got about 20 to 25 Kairahi who will lead at future meets, but we've also got a bunch of people who are just interested in the learnings available through this program who are welcome to attend. So spread the word. Anyone who wants to attend is welcome. The format for the talk is just, we have sort of a bunch of content, and that content will just help you when you are leading or performing the Kairahi role at events. Because there's so many of us, if you can just type questions into the chat and we'll have a look at those later. And also any subjects or ideas that come up for you, if you can just type them into the chat. So let's just talk about the aim of the program and how it fits in with Prans. So our aim with the Prans meets is to foster the safe enjoyment of pack rafting. The meets are our opportunity to set the benchmark for paddling safely. We want people to come to the meets, see good safety practice, learn a few things about how we paddle in groups, and then take that back out to the wider community. So that we basically grow the capability of the overall paddling community radiating out from our meets. And the Kairahi program is the real key to how we'll do this. The Kairahi are at the core of generating that culture of safety. So Hugh came up with this term Kairahi, and I'll let Hugh talk about what the Kairahi means.
The Kairahi was a word, like a lot of Maori words, it has no direct translation. And when you look at the word mentor, who wants to be a mentor? It sounds like somebody who's a counsellor, with people who are socially disadvantaged. And a guide isn't the right word. We're not guides. We don't take responsibility for everybody else. And so the whole idea that it could be mentor, guide, escort, counsellor, conductor, leader, pilot, rusher, I just like the idea. And it's one word that means all those things. So the difference between guiding is where, this is why we're very careful about this, is that guiding is where the guides take 100% of the responsibility for all of the safety and decision-making that occurs on a paddling trip. And, you sign up, you get out of your fancy clothes, you get into a wetsuit or whatever, and you go for a paddle down the river in a raft or a pack raft or whatever. We're not into that. So the idea is that we are there to help other people become better pack rafters for me to paddle with. And I'll give you the example. I paddled the Ottawa River with the world champion kayaker, and he said something really nice to me, which was, what sort of a paddler are you? And I said, well, I think I can roll most of the time, and this river's nice and deep by the look of it, but I've never paddled it before. And he said, well, he says, I know you're safe, he says, because I'm a really good paddler and I'm the world champion, but am I safe? Which I thought was the best question he could have asked me, and it put me right in my place. And I realized that, I was not going along with the world champion. I was going along to make sure that the other guy, the world champion, wasn't going to die, drown, or otherwise. And since neither of us had paddled this particular river before, the Ottawa River, it was a really good idea, and it changed my attitude, and it changed it permanently. So the idea of being a role model is that you're role modeling being a person to paddle with. Yeah, and walk the talk, act out the advice. These are the headings on here. I think that's right. Walking the talk is that you're just there to be a good person to paddle with. That sums it up. And the other one about monkey see, monkey do is that people do copy you. If you probably learnt most of your paddling and tramping and outdoor activities by just watching what other people do, because you'd be a beginner at one stage in a tramping trip and you watch that everybody else stops, or they make cups of tea, or they go and get firewood, or you will just copy those people. So the idea is you don't have to do anything other than be yourself to be a Kairahi. And the inspiration thing is, I remember being told on an instructor assessment by Nick Hopkinson of all people that I was a lousy instructor, but I was a fantastic bloody person to go paddling with, which I thought was, I was kind of, it's like being slapped and tickled at the same time. But the message was that I wasn't a particularly good instructor because I'm not a very good role model to follow. I'm very ugly when I paddle, and but I was good fun to be with, and I was safe to be with, and people liked going paddling with me. So I've stuck with that, and I think that's the message that I'm trying to get across in this whole program. We've seen. We don't want people to have to take on responsibilities for things that, you know, we have enough responsibility at home with our kids and our cats and our mortgages and our relationships and our jobs. And so the idea is that when we go off on the weekend, we don't need to take on any more responsibilities other than if you're going on a trip with somebody, you're going to be looking after them and they're going to look after you. And you will look at the people you paddle with completely differently once you start doing this job. So I just commend it to you, and I thank all of you for signing up to this, because if I look at all these names here, we've got a grid here with all these names on it, multiply that by 5, and you've got more than 100 people that are going to be better paddlers in another year's time. And I think that's fantastic. So thank you very much for doing it. The word kaitautoko, well, tautoko just means I agree. If you're at a meeting, somebody will get up and say, I tautoko what that fellow says. And it just means that I support what he says. I don't necessarily agree with it 100%, but I am supporting that person and what he said. And so if you're tautoko, you are supporting. So the idea is that if everything that you do, the whole idea of paddling with other people is that when you stop at the bottom of a rapid and look up, you are supporting the other people on that trip. So the idea is that the more you empower others, the safer you will be. So, you know, I've said this many, many times. My wife says, well, you're going off where this weekend? Oh, the West Coast, isn't it raining? Yes. Yeah, but I'm with a good bunch of people. That's the thing that you need to be able to say when you're going away for a weekend. I'm with a good bunch of people. And I will also use, just for the people who like to get technical, the difference between competence and capability. And competence is that you are good at what you do. So when you are a competent paddler, you look good, you do everything right. I've been with competent paddlers. They're very nice to paddle with. The best people to go with are capable paddlers. The capable ones are the ones who are very good at able to do stuff that they probably didn't know they did. And I like to think that you've always got capability and you're trying to increase your competence. So you can have capability, which is your potential to be competent. And I use that word. So you don't expect of 5 people on a trip that all of them are going to be competent at everything. Some of them will not know anything, but the idea is that the group as a whole will be capable. And if you see that mob there of people, I don't know where that was, but I took a trip of 50 down the Landsborough and it was a capable group. Not all of them were very competent, but they were capable, and they were the ones who were able to listen and the ones who were able to show others, and it works very well. And I distinguish it from guided trips. So we're not out there to guide. Don't expect any of you to take on any responsibility for other people, but you are going to be there to make other people take responsibility for you and all the other people on that trip. And I hope that's clear.
The key thing we want to focus on is there are a whole lot of people on this call, 20 of whom will function as kairahi at future meetups, and others that will be backers for them and develop into those roles, or are just here wanting to learn. And so it's this idea of a generous culture where we give as much as we want to give. Nothing's compulsory. It's really just sharing your love of the river. And the idea of the kairahi program is that we can do that in a consistent way, so that we just know that we've briefed everyone to the same sort of standard. And as Hugh said, the competence and the confidence around your capability. You may not be the world's best paddler. You may not be able to self-rescue, but you work within those limitations and give back what you can. Everyone has something to pass on to other people. And, you know, that may just be, you know, the love of the river and the passion for the river, you know, like the sort of stuff you hear when Stu Bilby talks about walking the length of the country. Hugh, did you want to tackle this slide? So just basically the viral cultural
Yeah,
change we're trying to
this
set in
is.
place.
I've come up through a kayak club. At the kayak club I'm in started 45 years ago, and before that I was in university and other tramping clubs, and then I had a guided sea kayaking business, and so I do know the difference. And in the sea kayaking business, I made every decision, and the guides made every decision, and then we would go off down to the Buller from the Abel Tasman and go paddling down the river, or go in a slalom, or go in a raft race or something. And it's people who've come up through the clubs are noticeable. You can tell. You can just watch people coming down the river and say, oh, they're in a club. In the States, down the Grand Canyon, somebody said, oh, you guys are in a club. I said, yeah, we're in a club. I was with my son and my nephew and another guy and a couple of Americans, and we were all from the club. They knew by the way we paddled, these are the professionals, knew by the way we paddled that we're in a club because of the mutual support that we give. And so I think that's what we're trying to go. It's not, you don't have to belabor people and give them a lecture. I think what you're going to be doing is saying, stopping at the tops of rapids, having a conversation where you're asking all the questions. You're not telling anybody how they're going to run the rapid. The only time you need to actually become directive is you think if somebody's going to actually kill themselves or kill somebody else. And you can be very, I hate the word facilitative, but facilitative is the way you do it. So what we're looking at is the kairaki thing is not about individual skills so much. They will develop. If you want individual skills, my view is you should go on a course, and it can be with a kayak club, or it can be with an outdoor trust, or it can be with one of the instruction people, and there's about 5 or 6 of them now. People like Hugh and Arno and those other guys, and they will teach you individual skills. What you won't get on an instruction course, unless it's specific, is the kind of teaching that the kairaki thing does. So the idea is that the kairaki program will supplement and strengthen what you get on individual skills. So if you're looking at a picture there, there's Hugh with his ute. He's going to be teaching people how to catch eddies. He's going to teach them how to paddle, how to catch the rope, how to throw a rope, how to cross a river, how to run a river. He will give you, and I've been on his courses and worked with him, he will also tell you, that you need to stop at the river, etc., etc. But basically, the man in the blue hat with orange jacket by the ute is in charge. There's not much decision-making is going to occur outside of that one guy, because he really knows what he's doing, and he's running a course, and he's running it to WorkSafe rules. And so he'll have to run it that way. He'll have to be directive. If you swap Hugh to going paddling with me and Martin and Brendan, and who else was it?
Ben.
Ben, yeah. When we went down the Wairau on a bloody horrible cold day, it's completely different. Hugh's not telling us what to do. I'm looking out for him, hoping he doesn't fall out because he's quite big. And I'm watching other people. He's watching me. We had a couple of conversations down the river. Somebody said, are you cold? More than once, because I bloody was. And I was starting to fall apart by the end of the trip. It was getting easier and I was getting worse. Other people were banging into people. There was some stuff that was going on. The lines were being chosen were a bit odd. There was a conversation going on right the way through that river. And at no stage did Hugh act like an instructor, not once, because he knows exactly. I would paddle with him anywhere. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows the difference. If he's on a course, he's Sergeant Major Hugh Miles, and he's quite different. It's quite a different vibe. He doesn't change his personality, he just changes who's taking the decisions. He stands back and he is bossing people around a bit. Now, when you're a kairaki, you're going to be the Hugh Miles that is the guy that you go paddling with if it's just friends. You're not going to be expected to be directive. You're not going to make decisions about whether people portage or not. You would only intervene if there was a consensus view that somebody maybe who thinks they can run something, and you'll say, well, you may want to run it, but I can't rescue you. That's the quickest way to tell somebody that they're not running a river, not running a rapid, and they're going to portage it. I can't rescue you. That's the answer. So I'm just giving you some of the stuff that you probably already know, that you're not here to impart people and tell them how to hold their paddle or how to do a draw stroke. You're there to say, how do we paddle so that we're mutually supporting one another?
Yeah. And so this is the introduction that Hugh's giving, and at the end there's room for some questions to Hugh and some insights from Hugh. The other topics we're going to do are safety briefings. Megan Setti is going to run that. Yesterday I ran, or Sunday ran the Hutt Gorge with Megan, and we all know each other, so we hardly do any briefing on a river like that. But she actually just pulled us back and said, right, let's just go over this to be really clear on it. And that's what I like about Megan. That's why she's doing that safety briefings one. Then we've got Kelvin Montague, who has been to quite a few of our Packraft meets, but is based in Australia, and he's just going to cover group paddling. So that's just how we structure groups on the river and how we avoid being a herd of chickens sort of randomly flying in all directions on the river. Then on the Wairo at the St Arnaud meet, Kelly O'Hagan was a real inspiration in terms of just the fun that she had with her group as she paddle down the river. And so we've picked up that Mark Oates quote, "Boat don't float," with just some ideas that Kelly's got about a few fun things you can do on the river to keep people entertained, because we can have quite a wide range of skill within a group. We can have grade 3+ paddlers down to beginning grade 2 paddlers. And so just to keep things interesting for the more advanced paddlers, there's a few ideas that she'll share. And then I'll do a session on scouting rapids, which is just something that we want to have people come to the event and leave the event knowing how to sort of look at a rapid and break the rapid down. We don't tend to do that on our courses at the moment. It's more a skill that people develop over time. So it's useful for the kairahi just to run through the thought process they have. And with all these things, we just want to put some structure around that with some mnemonics and acronyms for those things. And then the last one, I don't know if you've seen it, but Barney Young posted a video and talked about some of the issues he sees with pack rafters. He posted a video of a rescue where a kayak was pinned on a vertical drop, and Barney's response to that incident is just really inspiring, the way he stays calm and he's prepared for it. And there's a reason he's prepared for it, because he has prepared for it, kind of thing. So we just talk about rescue readiness and situational awareness, so that we're constantly aware of what we're going to do if we come out of the boat. We're constantly aware of who is around us and how we would help them or how they would help us. So those are the topics. If you've got any other suggestions that you'd like to see covered, you can pop them in the chat. And then the next thing we're going to do is November the 19th on the Mohaka River for North Island paddlers. We're just going to do a bit of workshopping of stuff on water, some of these concepts, and particularly the scouting and setting safety aspects. So that's on the Mohaka, and the reward for the kairahi is that it's got really nice grade 3 sections, as you can see here, with Bill tackling the first rapid on the grade 3 section of the Mohaka. There's half a dozen decent rapids like that we can workshop and learn on. So that's kind of another payback for the kairahi there. I've got a little video of that, but it doesn't play very well. But I will just play the video. The link I will send out so that you can look it up on YouTube. This will just be really glitchy and will just move frame by frame for you, unfortunately. But it'll give you the idea of, when you look at this rapid, you're probably all looking at taking a line between these rocks and coming down here and powering off down through the rest of the rapid. So it's informative just to look at how Bill breaks this rapid down, and that's the kind of stuff we would talk about on the on-river workshop. So that's probably just glitching for you, but you can just see from the frames where he's ending up, and you can infer the moves he's making between those frames. So he's just used, calm water behind a rock to size up the next piece. and he cuts through a lateral with perpendicular to it, so that his boat's stable, sits in an eddy, and now he's eyeing up a very chunky pile up down below him where other paddlers could potentially get caught up. So he's looking at that at the moment, and now he's just showing off and doing a bit of surfing before turning, and he passes a great big pile up, which is quite hazardous, and that makes that rapid a class 4 minus in certain flows, because you can see there's just a big pile up in here where the water's recirculating. So he's coming down and he's doing that, and he's got safety set. There's someone with a rope down on the rock down here. I've got a rope with me up filming it. And that's the kind of level of excitement on this Te Ho'i section that we're going to run in November on the Mohaka. And so the other element to the Kairahi program is that we've surveyed you on your skills gaps and what you think skills gaps are, and identified that swift water safety is probably something that we should look into subsidizing people on. So with certain conditions around returning, returning in kind, paying it forward by coming along to meets and being Kairahi, then you can get these subsidies for swift water training. So that's just an example of some swift water stuff. I think that it's either on a course or it's just on the Huranui Huli, where Tom Waters led a little exercise. And one of the things we want to come out of the on river days with is our Kairahi being capable of just running in choosing a safe location. This is a very safe location to run a throw bag refresher. So we're going to look at how we just ensure that all the Kairahi have that capability and are armed with some information to help them run a basic sort of refresher. No fancy ropes course. We want people to go and do courses with Daniel Manzano up in Rotorua, the kayak school in Murch, Hugh down in Queenstown, Arno further south. We want you to do those courses, but when we come to a meet, it's no good having done a course if you're not practicing it. So part of what we want to foster at the meetups is that we need to be practicing. We need to do that practice. So we kind of had a few questions here, which this is kind of one of the things that really spurred us back in the day to get this Kairahi thing going. Was Mark Oates came over with a crew of Australians who were kind of the original Kairahi. Hugh couldn't make it to the event, Hugh Cannard, but Mark Oates had people buffing off this rock in the Acheron River, and here's Sarah buffing. And so I just kind of facetiously make the comment, look, Charlie's no Sarah the buffer Elmer, so why are they a Kairahi? You might have that noise. There are kind of active detractors out there in the community who will say, oh, you're taking on liability if you're going to be a Kairahi, and what if something goes wrong and you're not good enough to do that, all that, imposter syndrome that people might feel. Don't worry about it. Everyone that is generously giving, you're in the spirit of the program, and everyone will improve over time. If you don't feel ready to be Kairahi, then just look at whether you can help someone like Sarah when she's leading a group. The question at the top there is like, hey, I've done heaps of trips and I want to get a free course. Well, to get a free course or to get a subsidy on a course, we want people to have demonstrated a commitment to PRANZ and been at previous events and committed to future events. So if you've got any other questions, now's the time to kind of pop them in the chat there for Hugh to answer. You can just type those in. Hugh can just go through his golden rules.
This business about never pressuring another paddler. It's kind of the culture in all club type events and with people that you want to paddle with. that if you get to the top of a rapid and somebody just says, "Oh, I'm just not feeling like running this sort of thing," or whatever, the culture is such that you say, "Okay, fine." What happens when somebody says, "I want to run this," and you don't think they should? I covered that briefly, which is that the answer is, if you're not happy to rescue them, they're going to have to do it on their own, and then you're not paddling with them. It's a very harsh thing to do, and I've had to do it more than once. I've been on rivers where we've got, for example, the top of Granity Creek, if you know how big that is, and I'm quite happy to run it. The other people want to run it. I don't think they should, because they just had 3 swims on the bit that was leading into it. So all I could say to them was, "Well, I can't rescue you, so I'm going to walk it. I'll wait at the bottom for you, but I'm not going to I can't paddle down this and rescue you because I'm not willing to." And there's a conversation that occurs from that. And some people are thick enough that they will still run it. And they usually go for a swim, and it is a long rescue at some stress. So the answer, I think, is that those are the people that you can have one conversation with them, maybe a second one, and then don't ever paddle with them again. That's been I have a lot of people I won't paddle with. There's probably a few people who won't paddle with me, but I'm not aware of that. So I'm just telling you that's just the kind of conversations that go on about portages are quite key to the role of kairahi. And this is where you're not taking responsibility for them, you're still taking responsibility for yourself. So if you're responsible for everybody else and they're responsible for you, and something goes wrong, then if there's any kind of I'm just giving you the worst of this, if there's any kind of inquest or coronial inquiry, or the media or the cops or anybody gets hard on you, then the answer is that you'll have a standard answer. The answer is that I was there to do the best I could for looking after them. Things went wrong. If you have a look at the fatality that we had down on the Reese, I suspect that conversation didn't occur, but I don't know because there's been no report on it. But the story that we've heard is that somebody decided to run a particular section of the river and the others didn't. That would have been a red flag on any trip that you'd be on these days. If somebody says they want to run something and nobody else wants to run it, everybody's walking it. That's basically how it works.
I'd just like to give the example of on the Rangitikei. There's a grade 3 rapid there. It had a siphon where the water went under a rock. Pretty horrid for a beginner pack rafter, and you would have had to have been pretty ordinary to end up going under that rock. And then next to that, there was a log that was pretty nasty. But again, you'd have to be a very ordinary paddler to go under that rock. And we got there, and we had a few ordinary paddlers with us. And before I could say anything to the group, Bill Thompson had picked up his pack raft, and Bill can paddle anything, and he was walking it.
Yeah.
And there's, he could have paddled that backwards. He could have paddled it with his hands, but he set the example. And I think that's one thing as kairahi that's a real challenge, is not to kind of show off what you can do in terms of stuff. Sometimes I might get a little sneaky and walk a rapid and get to the bottom, and once everyone's at the bottom, I'll go, actually, that looks doable, and sneak back and do it with some of the capable people. But that rapid in that picture there on the Matukituki from the last meetup, we spent a lot of time talking about that rapid and what lines we might run on that rapid, and invariably everyone just kind of ran down the guts of it, and a few people walked it, but it's that kind of dynamic that occurred in those conversations that I think, having a kairahi weekend where we get together on the water and maybe we pair up and you go, right, your job is to tell Hugh that he can't paddle this rapid, and see if you can do it in a subtle way that gets him to decide that he decided that himself, and just talk about what techniques do we use to have those conversations, and how do we unpack those things when afterwards something goes wrong. So Hugh, on to your number 2. I think we've got a
Well, I think, the number 2 is the mutuality thing, which is the difference between a guided trip and any other trip. An amateur trip is that you're responsible. In a guided trip, you go sign up on a rafting trip or a guided kayak trip or whatever, a guided horse trek. Somebody's making all those decisions. They're going to look after all those decisions. They're the ones who know the river. You could be paddling a river you've never done before, and I know Stu's. I think every second bloody river you've paddled is one you've never done before, and neither is anybody else because you're doing first descents. And so that's where these decision-making skills come in. So when you start to get challenged, when things go wrong, when you get like on the Huranui one day, we came down and all we could see ahead of us was a conveyor belt of trees and brown water going at 90 degrees to the direction we were going. And it was a very warm day with no wind. But the trouble is there was a cloudburst or whatever, a flash flood came down a tributary. We spent 2 hours climbing through burnt out gorse that was full of wild pigs, and then found out that there was a road on the other side of the river. So you remember these days, and you remember them with affection with the distance of time. So I think that the people that I've paddled with over these years and the club culture is such that you're brought up that way. If you've gone, learnt to kayak or learnt to pack raft or learnt to whatever on nothing but instructions courses, you're gonna find that those people are the hardest ones to change the culture with. And with pack rafters, an awful lot of pack rafters, because pack rafting is so easy to learn, have had no cultural assimilation into paddling in a group. So that the biggest challenge you're going to have is getting number 2 across to everybody. So you may need quite a lot of conversations about that, and you may need to ask people who they think they're responsible for, because the typical person I've go paddling pack rafting with says that they're responsible for themselves. And you're going to have to try and turn that around, in my opinion, because in actual fact, you're only as safe as the other people. And I can also, once again, because I've paddled for so many millions of years, most of the worst swims I've had have been when I've been instructing people. And I've been saved by the bloody clients. So there you go. They're nice people. They knew to look after me. Oh, well, this one about no one ever drowned on a portage is very true. And also that business about Bill setting an example, that comes right back to the thing I said at the start about you're a role model. If you get to the top of a rapid and you think that there are at least 1 or 2 people in your group that should portage it, and they're showing in signs that they are putting pressure on themselves to run it, then that's when you can start doing that, setting an example. You don't have to run it for them.
So thanks everyone for coming. Let us know if you have any ideas, pop them in the chat or pop them on the Facebook page. I'll set up a Facebook page for the Kairahi program where we can sort of put ideas up and questions. Really keen to hear if there are any topics that we've missed or topics that are important to you that we haven't covered. There's potential to expand the program. We're recording it, so we'll put the recordings up on a YouTube playlist, and all the videos that we use in the sessions are in that playlist. So you can actually do a bit of a pre-read or preview before we get into our sessions, so that you've seen the videos, and particularly for the safety ones, had a chance to think about what's going on in the videos and what we can learn from the videos, maybe make some notes to then discuss. And yeah, we'll use the chat function in Zoom to field those questions. So just get in the habit of, if you've got any questions, jot them down, and then when we come on our calls, type them in. Really awesome that so many people turned up. We had apologies from 5 or 6 of our Kairahi who are out in the hills or otherwise engaged. And we'll be looking to have another session in about 3 weeks. Thanks, everyone. Awesome session. Thank you.